Sonic Unleashed throughout the years has undergone a transformation between being bashed upon release to now being relatively accepted among Sonic fans. At least a good chunk of them. Not all of them, but a decent amount. With its controversial nighttime sections with the Werehog, a lot of people will put off from truly enjoying this game. Most of the reasons all stem to it being too different from a regular Sonic experience and that it takes away too much attention from the high-octane daytime stages, which were definitely fun, I'll admit. But did the Werehog truly deserve that negative reception? When I first played Sonic Unleashed, admittedly, I wasn't too big on the Werehog concept myself. It felt slow, clunky, and didn't have the same combat flair that Devil May Cry had, which at the time was all I knew. So, little babby ChaserTech at the time wrote it off as a dull experience and thought the Werehog was subpar. I thought all of the skills were not needed, so I dumped all of my EXP into strength, and I spammed the same 2 combos over and over again until I beat the game, with very low scores. Fast forward a couple of years, going back into the nighttime sections again, I had a change of mindset and I realized there's a lot more under the hood than I initially thought. So I wanted to dig a bit deeper and see what exactly I could find, and now I'm a little surprised. With all of that being established, I wanted to take my time to lay down why I think the Werehog is better than what the people gave the gimmick credit for. Because, despite its simplicity, I fully believe Sonic Team could have added more to this style of gameplay. To get a complete understanding of the Werehog, I thought it'd be best to actually go through some of the nighttime stages and S-rank them. I wanted to make sure that I played enough so I got a full grasp of the Werehog's gameplay, and since I've already beaten the game before and know which enemies to look out for specifically, I knew which stages I wanted to focus on. So with each stage that I went through, I mostly focused on unlocking more moves by filling up my combat experience gauge and also increasing my other stats a bit so I don't end up taking too long to finish a stage. I had a goal in mind to finish most of the stages under 15 minutes while still achieving an S rank. So for the general feel of the Werehog, the controls are something. They're a mixture of good and stiff, I'll tell you that much. In the platforming segments, he controls fluid. Going into the nighttime stage in Spagonia is extremely satisfying, especially during the last bit of the stage when you're climbing inside the interior of the clock tower. And while you're reeling yourself in after grabbing a handle or a ledge, you can hold the jump button and immediately hop up with a small jump. This allows you to effortlessly cruise around the level in one smooth fashion. On the opposite side, for his combat section, I can tell that he's been eating a bit too many chili dogs because he's feeling kinda chunky. He's a bit of a tank and takes a while to adjust himself during his attack strings, which isn't too big of a problem if you're using his claw attacks. These particular attacks cover a great range all around him, but they don't do a lot of damage. His straight attacks are sort of the opposite though, since they do solid damage, but yet they mainly focus in front of the Werehog. Even dodging feels kinda jank. There's this awkward pause that he does in the beginning of the roll because you have to hold down the shield button for almost half a second and then you can roll. Overall, the combat is rough around the edges, but once when you get used to it, it's not that bad. Perhaps being spoiled by other action games also doesn't help that much either. What also doesn't help is that this game runs like complete booty butt cheeks on the PS3 version. Most games run poorly on the PS3 anyway, but since Sonic Unleashed is a different breed, it runs disgustingly terrible. Even on the Xbox, it's not that great unless you have an Xbox Series X, which can run fairly smooth. And I think the Xbox One version runs pretty well too. Outside of the game feel and performance, the gameplay of the nighttime sections themselves were fairly fun. Once when I started putting more experience into the Werehog skill list, I started messing around more and more with each of the button sequences that I was given. On the surface, they don't seem much. You would think that from a Sonic game that's inspired by God of War, it would be extremely dull and repetitive. Like, you have your regular attack strings in a block that you start off with, the basics, really. But the moment your moveset is expanded, you start gaining more useful abilities, such as a spinning dash attack or a charge punch that can deal a lot of damage. Alright, Sonic Team, I see you making baby's first action game. Wait, what's this? We got launchers too? Okay, you getting my hopes up. Okay, I can work with this. What's surprising is that most of these combo strings actually have something that sets them apart from each other, at least with some of them. For example, with Donkey Kick Combo, you can go completely through shields, or with how Werehog Rush, you can run into enemies while repositioning yourself, and if you do it on ice, it will prevent you from sliding around. A lot of these moves have a purpose in some way. Now, I know, it might seem that I'm hyping up these things, but I am genuinely surprised that the Werehog has something to work with. Meanwhile, you have games like Devil's Hunt, which came out in 2019 and has the crunkliest combat I've ever played. But here, it feels like Sonic Team didn't just slap on random moves onto this Werehog form and called it a day. They actually have their use in gameplay. There's combos that cause stun, break guards, allows you to perform aerial combos, and even power drivers that damage enemies all around Sonic. This is some pretty well thought out stuff for a Sonic game. Then we have the enemies themselves, which aren't bad. They feel more annoying than actually hard. The smaller enemies are hard to gauge because when they attack you, it's hard to gauge when they'll attack. As for the bigger enemies, these guys are much smarter than what I initially believed, especially the Dark Gaia beasts. They block your attacks frequently in the middle of being hit by your attacks. If you jump in the air, they will try to do an anti-air attack, and they lunge at you from a distance, or they use a charge attack to cover a large area. There's also Eggman robots that can shoot projectile attacks at you, along with mages that will buff and heal their teammates. All of these enemies work as intended, except these guys. Screw these guys. There's also the giant Titan boss that you normally fight at the end of a level or just at an end of a particular section. And these guys aren't terrible. They're kind of repetitive. Like, you hit them a few times and then you see their attack animation start up. So you have to roll away in order to clear yourself from the attack. And then you just do this repeatedly until the QTE pops up for you to finish them off. And then that's it. And they're really easy to fight. After you reach the end of a level, you are graded based off of your time, rings, enemies defeated, combos that you pull off, and crush, which is based on the amount of items and objects that you destroy. I want to focus precisely on the rankings, enemies, and combo. If you manage to die in the middle of a stage, your score resets to 0, but depending on how well you fight enemies, you can get a solid score at the end. Critical arts play a huge role if you want to get a good score, but not really necessary unless you take a death or if the stage is too short. Pulling them off is sort of awkward. You have to stand still and wait for the enemy to be a certain range after their health is depleted a certain amount so you can execute the button prompt. It's like Sonic has to wait for the enemy to catch his breath before beating him into a bloody pulp. But sometimes they will move away and then you end up grabbing them instead. And this happened to me so many times. It's very frustrating to do. While encountering hordes of enemies, one cool thing that you can do with one of the Werehog's mechanics is that you can shield to cancel your attacks. It has a bit of a lag, but it's quick enough for you to cancel one combo string into another. So with enough experimentation, you begin to realize that you can cancel a lot of moves that have knockback while following up with another move. You can even do a very quick grounded launcher, something that you can't do under normal circumstances. By canceling the uppercut portion of this move, you can launch enemies without having to leave the ground. And since this move also breaks guards, it becomes an even more powerful tool. With this mechanic, you can get quite creative, and even I found myself having fun with this system. Now, I know what some of you guys may think. What's the point of doing all of this when you can spam 2 combos and still get an S rank? Well, same reason why anyone else would experiment with the kit that they're given. Because they want to? I mean, if you give me a box of crayons and ask me to draw something, I don't care what it is, just draw it and I'll be happy. I'm going to use as much as I can to create a pretty picture. I will not take one singular crayon out of a box of 120 colors. You can do that, but not me. I will admit it's annoying that the game doesn't give you rewards for mixing up your combos, but using all of your moves in tandem makes your experience a lot faster compared to spamming the same move over and over again. There might be a bit too many moves in this skill list though, at least more than what's needed. I started noticing that once when you get more moves, a lot of your beginning combos become very obsolete. Another thing that I want to point out is that with all of the moves that you get, only 3 of them have their usage outside of combat. The Wereclaw Charge, Werehog Ken, and Spinning Needle Attack can be used to aid in traverse areas, making the time that it takes to finish a stage relatively shorter. I would have loved for more moves to complement the platforming. I've stated this before in my Devil May Cry 5 gameplay retrospect perspective video where I wish more moves complemented with the platforming. Speaking of platforming, let's talk about that. Like I stated earlier, these segments feels very smooth when you're jumping from platform to platform, swinging from handles and poles, and hopping from different ledges and whatnot. In fact, this is where I ended up having the most fun with the Werehog sections, and I felt like Sonic Team could have focused more on this type of platforming. When you get into a good rhythm, these areas have a very nice groove to them. Now that I think about it, I wonder what made Sonic Team's decision to include hack and slash gameplay when more could be done with the platforming. Imagine if Sonic could interact with the environment more. This made me draw comparisons between this game and Super Sammy Roll, which you should definitely check out, by the way. You play as this adorable little fella who can roll into a ball and use his tongue to latch on to various things. When you reel yourself into something, like a wall, you can jump off of that wall. You can loop this as many times as you want to as well. There are a lot of little bite-sized levels to go through, and each of them have some speedrunning tomfoolery that you can do. Like, take this beach level for instance. You can go through this stage normally by going along the attendant route, or with some good positioning, you can fling yourself onto this buoy and propel yourself to the finishing goal. Not saying that Sonic should have played exactly like this, but ideas similar to this could have added more fun elements within its gameplay. Now, while there are things that I liked about Sonic Unleashed, there are things that I really didn't like about the nighttime stages, such as balancing on skinny scaffolding. And what's even worse is that you have to balance on these small boards with spikes on the side of them across bottomless pits with the most obnoxious camera angle that they can give you. It's already hard enough that Sonic does not have a clear drop shadow below him when you're jumping across platforms, and at times the depth perception can get a little weird when the camera transitions to a different view. But to have this balancing nonsense at awkward camera angles is just, man, it just makes me want to puke. So yes, the Werehog stages have some flaws for sure, but that's not to say that the Werehog itself is the main problem. The issues that I talked about were actually due to the levels themselves, as well as a few minor hiccups within the combat. I imagine if these problems were cleared up, the night stages would be a lot better than how they were originally. Maybe not perfect for everyone, but maybe enough so that more people can have fun with the Werehog. I don't know, maybe one day Sega might take this concept and apply it to a new game entirely. I wouldn't mind that. Overall though, I think analyzing this game made me realize that it's definitely not as bad as I remembered. In fact, replaying this game before I wanted to work on this video, I feel like it's definitely one of my favorite Sonic games. As usual, thank you for watching. If you like my content, feel free to subscribe and whatnot. For a future video, I think I want to go over Sonic Frontiers combat too, since there's a lot that I would like to discuss, but before that, I got something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while.